Hi guys, Mr. Mackey here. Now last night I set you a little challenge. I had £10 and I spent £1.60 on shampoo, 75p on a loaf of bread and £2.38 on some milk. I wanted you to not only find out how much I spent, but then what was my overall change from that. Now, we're going to do part 1 first, and for that we're going to need to column our answer. So now we've columned it. Now because we're finding out how much we spent in total, we're going to be adding these three together. But before we do that, we have to remove the decimals. So we're going to remove them, put them in the little reminder box, and then label it with a red arrow so we know where they were. Now we're going to get on with it. So 0 add 5 will get us 5, add 8 will get us 13. So we have 1 from the old round, 3 from the new round. 6 add 7 is 13, add 3 is 16, add the 1 from the previous round will get us 17. So it's 1 from the old round, 7 from the new round. 1 add 0 is 0, add 2 is 3, add 1 from the old round is 4, so it's 473. But now we need to remember to put the old decimal back. So we find where our arrow was. So let me just rub it out. See, the decimal's so good, it doesn't want to leave. So we remember where the arrow is, so we line them all back up. And then to keep it in line with the arrow, we put it there. So the total amount we spent was £4.73. But now we need to find out how much change there is. So we need to subtract that from £10. Now I've put that in a column, but we need to remember to include that extra 0 so they're all lined up. And we now need to remove the decimal, put it in the reminder box, and with our red pen, indicate where it was. Now, for this question, we can get on with it. So let's do it. 0 take away 3, we can't do. So we have to borrow a hat from the neighbour. There's no hat there, so we have to borrow a hat from that neighbour. There's no hat there, so we borrow a hat from this neighbour. That neighbour turns into a 0, the hat goes up on there. Let's now try this again. There's nothing there, so we have to borrow a hat from the neighbour. There's no hat there. But there is now a hat on this one. So this number becomes a 9. The hat now goes here. Next day we're going to try again. There's nothing to subtract, so we now take the hat from the neighbour who finally got one. So turn that into a 9. This then finally gets a hat, becoming a 10. 10 take away 3 will get us 7. 9 take away 7 will get us 2. 9 take away 4 will get us 5. And 0 take away 0 will get us 0. So now we have 527, but we have to put our decimal back. Because of our lined up red arrow, we know where the decimal will go. So the total amount of change that I will get is £5.27. So today we're going to be multiplying and dividing decimals. The good news is we'll be doing a similar method to yesterday with removal and reminding, but we will be doing it slightly different. The way we're going to be doing it today, you will need to have watched episode 7 of my channel. So if you haven't watched that episode, go back and watch that now, and then once you've done that, come back to this and then you will be fine. So the first problem we're going to focus on is 8 times 1.6. Now, for this, I am going to get rid of the decimal, not by just rubbing it out. We're going to do something a bit more different. We're going to times just 1.6, not the 8, just 1.6 by 10. The reason why we're going to be timesing it by 10 and not just rubbing out the decimal is in multiplication, the place value could change. So there's no point lining it up because we might end up with a different place that decimal would be. So what we do is we get rid of the decimal first, and then in this way, and then afterwards we put it back. But I'll show you how to put it back in just a minute. So we're timesing it by 10. The reason why we're timesing it by 10 is because when we do, that becomes a whole number. So remember what we do whenever we're timesing something by 10, we count how many zeros they are and we move the decimal across from there to there. So the number becomes 16. So now we're doing 8 times 16. Now, rule part number 2 is we choose our multiplication trick. I taught you 2 tricks on episode 4. See, I can't even remember. I can't even keep track. I'm doing these all the time. So the trick I'm going to do to this problem is I'm going to column it. So I have now columned it, so the big numbers on top and the 8 at the bottom. Now we're going to get on with it. So let's do it. Sound like a robot there, what was that? So, we're first going to do our 8 times 6, which will get us 48. Then we're going to do 10 times 8, which if you did your times tables would have get us 80. And then we add them together. So 8 at 0 gets us 8. 4 at 8 would get us 12. So 16 times 8 will get us 128. But whoa, hang on a minute. That wasn't the question we started with. We started with 8 times 1.6. Not 8 times 16. So how do we go back to where we started? How do we remind ourselves to put the decimal back? Well, if we timesed our problem by 10, we have to divide it by 10 to put it back. So if we divide our problem by 10 to put it back, we have to divide our answer by 10 as well. So we do 128 divided by 10. And remember, when we're dividing, we move our decimal in that direction. So, and there's 1 0, so we move it once across. So, the actual answer to 8 times 1.6 is 12.8. So today's method is a little bit different to yesterday's, but it is essentially the same. So let's do another problem. 2.4 times 0.7. Now, because we've got a decimal on 2.4, we're going to remove it. And we're going to do that by timesing it by 10. Because 2.4 times by 10 will get us 24. We've also got 0.7. We're going to remove that decimal as well by timesing it by 10 as well. Because 0.7 times by 10 will get us just 7. Now we're going to choose our own special trick. Earlier, I did the column method. So now I'm going to do the box method. Now, you know you've done the box method correctly when you have a 2 by 2 box, because there's 2 digits here and 2 digits there, because we did start off with a 0, remember, so we have to include that. And also, once you've split the box into those bits, you have to also create 2 little triangles in each one. So let's get on with it. So, 4 times 0. Well, anything times by 0 will always be 0. 4 times 7. Well, if you know your 7 times table or your 4 times table, that will get us 28. So you put your 2 there and the 8 there because it's a 2-digit number. 2 times 0, back to the same problem, it's a 0. And 2 times 7 will get us 14. Put the 1 there and the 4 there. Now we extend our segments and we add up how much is in each one. So there's only 8 in this, so you put the 8 here. 2 at 4 gets us 6. And 1 at 0 gets us 1. And then of course we got our 0 here. So 24 times 7 is 168. But that wasn't the problem we started with. It was 2.4 times 0.7. So we need to put those original decimals back. So for the first one we had 2.4 and we timesed it by 10 to get to 24. We now need to reverse it. So 24 divided by 10 will get us to 0.4. And if we divided it by 10 in the problem, we have to divide it by 10 in the answer. And when we're dividing, we move our decimal points this way. So we move our point from here to here. So it becomes 16.8. But there's still another one. We still have that 7. And we times it by 10 to go from 0.7 to 7. We have to divide it by 10 to go from 7 to 0.7. So we now put our decimal back because we divided our problem by 10, but we also need to divide our answer by 10. So we move our decimal another space across. So the actual answer, 2.4 times 0.7, is 1.68. We removed our decimals and we put them back. So division is fairly similar to multiplication in how to get rid of the decimal, but we don't need to put it back afterwards. And here is why. I'll show you with this problem. 12 divided by 0.3. Now, how we get rid of the decimal? We have to times our 0.3 by 10. So when you get rid of it, it becomes 3. Because we times this side by 10, we have to times that side by 10 as well. So 12 times by 10 will get us 120. And this is now what we're going to be dividing. We're going to be dividing 120 by 3. And do you remember what we used to divide? That's right, we used the bus stop. So let's get on with it now. Okay, how many 3's go into 1? Well, that's too small, so it doesn't at all. So we put a 0 and we carry that 1 across, so it's 12. How many 3's go into 12? Well, let's go for our 3 times table. 3, 6, 9, 12. It goes in 4 times with no remainder. How many 3's go into 0? Well, it's smaller, so 0 times. And there's no other numbers to do, so we leave it at that. So the answer is 40. Do we need to change it? No, because 12 divided by 0.3 is exactly the same as 120 divided by 3. It may be different numbers, but it actually gets you the exact same solution. So all you have to do is get rid of the decimals, remove the decimals, and that's it. And that's how we divide with decimals. So what about this problem? 45.8 divided by 0.05. So let's get rid of the decimals. How do we get rid of the decimals in this one? So let's get rid of that decimal first, because that's, in order. So we have to turn 45.8 into a whole number. To get rid of that decimal, we times it by 10. So it becomes 45.8. Absolutely fantastic. So now we have 0.05. We need to times our decimal by 10. But if we times it by 10, we move our decimal 1 point across. And that will just get us 0.5. We've still got a decimal there. So we're going to have to times it by 10 again. So we move the decimal 1 more point across, and that becomes 5. Fantastic. We've now times it by 10 twice to get 5. Amazing. But we still have that problem. You can't just times it by 10 twice there and leave that one out. So we have to times this by 10 as well. So this becomes 4,580, and we're dividing it by 5. Now we can do it. So let's turn this into a bus stop. So let's get on with it. How many 5s go into 4? Well, 4 is too small, so it goes in 0 times. We then carry that 4 across, so it becomes 45. How many 5s go into 45? Well, let's do our 5 times table. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. It goes in 9 times with a remainder of 0. How many 5s go into 8? Well, let's do our 5 times table. 5, 10, whoa, that's too high. So we only count once with a remainder of 2. How many 5s go into 20? 5, 10, 15, 20. It goes in a grand total of 4 times with no remainder, so we don't carry on. The answer, we don't even need to put the decimals back. 45.8 divided by 0.05 is 914. So here is your challenge today. I bought 4 books. The total price of all 4 of those books was £6.30. How much did one book cost? And then the next day I bought 7 books. I can't even spell today. Books. How much did 7 books cost? So I had 4 books for £6.30. How much did 1 book cost? And then how much did 7 books cost? Good luck on this problem. Now next week I'm going to start doing some GCSE and secondary school based lessons. So if there's any that spring to mind, please comment below and I will do my best to get them done that week. And don't forget to share this channel and tell everyone about it, because as I always say, we need to keep our children learning. Good luck, good night.